conviction that what we have delivered in the last 10 years is being appreciated by the people of India. And it is our confidence, not arrogance, it is our confidence that ये जनता सब समझती है. भारत की जनता जानती है उनके लिए अच्छा क्या है और भारत के लोग सही और गलत के फासले में इस देश को बहुत अच्छी तरीके से आगे बढ़े. हाँ, हम 400 पार एज एनडीए और 370 एज बीजेपी पाएंगे, पूरी तरीके से अचीवेबल है. और मैं समझता हूं कि आज जो मूड ऑफ द नेशन है, जो इस प्रकार का देश में माहौल है, उसमें इट्स 100% अचीवेबल.
Absolutely. Well, we're all waiting to hear the Honorable Home Minister who's going to be coming in next. We'll talk more politics with him there. Mr. Goyal, under your government, the economy is on track to reach a goal of 5 trillion by 2027. And we've got a great growth rate of 8.2% in the last quarter. So congratulations for that. But your government is still, our government is still in a way unable to convince your biggest critics. So my question is about the narrative. The narrative from the naysayers is that the growth is not for all, the growth is for few, that it's the macro, it's the macro taking a dim view, but individual level change for the people of the country is not happening. We are still not doing well on the global hunger index. Things like that, that our per capita income is still around $2,000. So there's nothing to celebrate yet. So, do you believe somewhere that you need to more strongly counter this narrative? Do you have plans for it? Do you intend to do it?
Well, I think this question can best be answered by the 4 crore families, which is almost 20 crore people, who are today living in a pakka house that the central government has provided for. I think this narrative can best be countered by the 80 crore brothers and sisters, some from poor, some from the neo-middle class, whose food security is assured because they get free food grains month in and month out through years, particularly during the COVID period when we had doubled the food grain that was distributed. This narrative can best be answered by the 55 crore plus beneficiaries of free healthcare under the Ayushman Bharat scheme, or the 11 crore plus sisters and mothers who today don't have to use a wood or coal-based chula, but have a cooking gas connection. It can best be explained, I think, to the naysayers by the 11 crore 20 lakh families who didn't have a toilet at home. And personally, that's the one subject that has touched me the most. That Honorable Prime Minister, as soon as he came into office, his focus was on Swachh Bharat, his focus was on open defecation free India, and his focus was that every woman, or for that matter, every person, has a right to dignity. And he spent large amounts of money to make sure that everybody gets a toilet at home. I think the naysayers have no choice but to take sense what's happening on the ground, where people have benefited from the 3 tracks that I just mentioned.
Yes.
After all, infrastructure has a huge multiplier impact on the economy, gives jobs, gives economic activity, all of which supplemented with social welfare programs, only some of which I listed out. The encouragement to young entrepreneurs through Mudra loans, to the startups of our young men and women. I can list out maybe 100 programs right now which have helped change the mindset of India. पर एक पुराना गाना है ना, समझने वाले समझ गए,
ना समझे वो अनाड़ी है.
I didn't say that.
I said it. I go for the kill. I go for the jugular. I'm not a politician. I'm not a diplomat.
I'm very used to that. I've had to face you for the last 15 years now.
Now you should also go for the jugular since you're going to be fighting the Lok Sabha elections. You just go for the kill. See, I have this view, Mr. Goyal, that there is a romance going on between India and the world right now that is not going to last. And I believe we should be very clear about the future where things are headed. You know, this whole line, we are working with the whole world. Look at how we managed Ukraine. We managed to work with America. We managed to work with Russia. We managed to work with Europe. Europe is becoming insular. But then I believe this romance will not last, and you can counter this because as we grow from 3 to 5 trillion, 5 to 8 trillion, and you yourself just said we will achieve 15 trillion by 2035, we will not be an object of curiosity. We will be a serious competitor, and I believe a little bit of that wrinkle, that tension, that stress showed up at the Abu Dhabi WTO meeting, where you held on to the position that Indians on fisheries, farmers, we cannot compromise. You were pushed back. Some people say you're wrecking things. So I'm saying, my view is, and I want a complete answer to this, they will accuse us of more protectionism. They will say, why is Elon Musk not coming to India? And you will say, we have enough manufacturers for e-vehicles in India. You will say, come to India on our own terms. They will say, we want their terms. You know, so, and if Donald Trump becomes President of the United States, you know how aggressive he is. How will we manage this? Do you see the stress on trade and economy growing between India and the rest of the world?
Absolutely not.
You don't?
Fact, I think this is Arnab at his old aggressive best coming out today. But I'd like to join issue with you on that. First of all, it is difficult for somebody who's used to being a superpower, who's used to being on top of things and dictating to the rest of the world. It's very difficult to reconcile on the changing geopolitics that's evident in the world today. So we had a situation where India, at the Uruguay round, or when GATS or TRIPS were being negotiated about 40 years ago,
yes,
we were a weak country. We compromised on many things. And I don't think the then government, irrespective whichever party was in government in the 80s, they could never visualize an India of 2024. They could never visualize that India and Indians will start asserting themselves. They could never visualize that India could also aspire to become a developed or a prosperous nation. And therefore, many wrongs, many decisions were made at that time, which we are fighting for today, where we are holding our ground, where we are working with other developed nations, and we have a very good coalition of the global south.
Yes.
And Prime Minister Modi has led from the front. He's got the African Union full membership of the G20. The entire less developed countries and developing world looks up to Mr. Modi's leadership today. And they look up to India holding the ground for what is good for them. Sometimes, even the less developed countries or countries who are not yet up the prosperity chart, particularly the small countries, do not realize that they are going down a path which may seem okay for the present, but can be very dangerous for them. And I think India plays that role of balancing the interests. We want all the countries to grow with the developed countries. At the same time, the developed countries are also gradually reconciled and recognizing that economic opportunity and business is only possible with a developing country like India. Somebody where there's 1.4 billion people, largely young people, 2/3 of our population in the working age, where the demand for goods and services is going to come from. So I think India offers a perfect opportunity to be friends with, to work with, to engage with as a democracy where the rule of law prevails. And the world is recognizing that. So while there may be some trepidation, some difficulty in accepting it, I think there is no choice but to work closely with India. And you will see in the months and years to come, more and more partnerships being forged, more and more relationships being developed between India and the developed world, particularly the developed world which believes in the rule of law, transparency, and ethical business.
I thought there was a lot of stress. I thought you were not getting any hugs and handshakes when you went for your global events. They looked at you with trepidation.
Not at all. I'm received very warmly. I have some wonderful relations across the world, as does my colleague Dr. Jaishankar, who's truly showcased to the world
Absolutely.
the India story like never before.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I call him the rock star.
You have. That video went viral.
And truly, he makes each one of us Indian proud. The way he presents the India story,
Yeah.
the way he stands up for what India is
Yeah.
doing, and I can only tell you, commerce and foreign ministry
Yes.
are today
Working very
working
closely.
literally as twin ministries, very closely aligned with each other. Messaging goes on between him and me literally by the minute.
Wow, wonderful.
And I can assure you that under Prime Minister Modi's guidance and leadership, both are working in an aligned manner to get the best for every Indian.
So I said to everyone coming to this event today, I said you should come for the event because if you spend half the day, one day with me at the event, you will get some sense of what is going to happen in the next half decade. We so called it the decade. And I believe that is what we want. You know, we go back into our lives. Somebody called me, oh no, what is in it for me? I said, you do your job every day, you do your work every day. Spend half a day, one day on where the country is going. You'll go back more inspired in your jobs. So my last question to you is this. Just 2 minutes if you can give me a sense. You know, you mentioned trade. You know, we are working very hard, for example, on the India-Middle East-EU economic corridor. Give us some sense of what we are going to see in our lifetime in the next 5 to 10 years. You know, what is that in the next decade, in a couple of minutes, from your insider's perspective? What are people going to see?
Well, I think in the next decade or so, we'll see a lot of technologies and investments coming from across the world to manufacture in India, which will provide economic activity, jobs to our young boys and girls, which will also provide our young startups
Yes.
with opportunities to innovate on their own ideas.
Yes.
And this will be necessary for the developed world,
Yes.
who are looking for a trusted partner.
Yes.
And today, for most parts of the developed world, in Europe, in the United States, in the Middle East,
Yes.
large parts of Eastern world like Australia, Japan, Korea, Taiwan, they are all finding in India a trusted partner, a country where the rule of law prevails, and this is going to drive huge amounts of investment and technology, which will not only serve the needs of a growing aspirational India, which will also be the sourcing base for the world. Case in point could be, I think, Apple. Apple started with very small beginnings.
Oh yeah, that's
They're
a big
already at
story.
7-8% of their global production coming out of India.
Absolutely.
Next 2 years, they expect to take it up to about 25% of their global production. And